In this market, bad decisions don't look bad until you try to sell them. Some of the most beautiful camper vans listed right now are the worst financial decisions you can make. Not because they're badly built, because they're illegally built. And the difference between a van that holds its value and one that loses $30,000 the moment you try to sell it comes down to 10 modifications that look completely normal until you try to register, insure, or resell them. I've tracked resale data across both the US and European markets. I've talked to buyers who got burned, dealers who flagged these issues at inspection, and insurance adjusters who denied claims on vans that looked flawless on the listing. What I found is that a significant percentage of builds sold right now, including some from well-known outfitters, contain at least one modification that is either technically illegal in your state or country, or will void your insurance payout when you need it most. You're going to learn exactly which 10 mods fall into that category. Not because they look bad, most of them look incredible, but looking good on a listing photo and holding value in a private sale are two completely different games. Smart buyers know the difference before they sign. Most don't. This is the part nobody tells you. Part 1. Roof raises and pop-tops without structural certification. The most visually appealing mod on the market is also the single most dangerous for your resale value. A raised roof or pop-top on a Ford Transit, a Sprinter, or a Ram ProMaster adds headroom, a better sleep layout, natural light. The build quality on the best ones is genuinely impressive. This is where people lose money anyway. The problem is not the modification. The problem is the paperwork, or the complete absence of it. In the United States, any structural modification to a vehicle's roof must be documented proving it meets federal motor vehicle safety standards, specifically FMVSS 216, roof crush resistance. When a builder cuts your roof and welds in a new section, they are altering the structural integrity of that vehicle. If that work is not certified by a registered engineer and documented with the appropriate modification form, it does not legally exist in the eyes of your insurer or the DMV. Sounds small. It is not. Here's what that means when it matters. You get into an accident, the roof structure is involved. Your insurer looks at the modification. No certification on file. They deny the claim, and your dream van just became your financial problem, out of pocket, on a vehicle you thought was fully covered. In the UK, Germany, and the Netherlands, this is enforced even more strictly through the IVA, Individual Vehicle Approval process. Any structural alteration requires IVA sign-off before the vehicle can be re-registered as a leisure vehicle. Without it, you lose the camper classification, you lose the tax designation, and when you try to sell, the buyer's inspector flags it in the first 20 minutes. The resale gap is not subtle. Certified pop-top transit conversions currently sell between $62,000 and $78,000 in the used market. Uncertified versions, same build, same age, same mileage, sell for $44,000 to $51,000, a 20% discount for skipping documentation that costs $500 to $1,500 to obtain. This is exactly where amateurs lose money. Now, this next one is where people accidentally make their van completely uninsurable, and most have no idea until it's too late. Part 2. Unlicensed LPG and propane installations. Propane is the most common cooking fuel in van conversions. Effective, affordable, familiar. The issue is that a propane installation inside a sealed vehicle is a fire and explosion risk, and compliance codes on both sides of the Atlantic have very specific requirements that most small builders don't meet. In the United States, RV propane systems must comply with NFPA 1192. Tank mounting, regulator specs, line materials, shutoff valve placement, ventilation, all of it governed. A conversion built without RVI certification or state-level LP appliance licensing is outside that standard. Your insurance policy excludes fire damage caused by non-compliant systems. Full stop. Most buyers don't read that clause until they need it. In the EU, the standard is EN 1949. Germany and France inspected registration. The UK requires gas-safe certification for any van classified as a motor caravan. An installation without it is not a paperwork gap. It's a legal liability that transfers directly to you the moment you sign. They don't just inherit the van, they inherit your mistake. This is also where the market is shifting. Smart buyers in 2026 are increasingly specifying induction cooking on fully electric setups, large lithium bank, shore power capable, no gas certification required, lower insurance complexity, higher resale appeal in European markets where LPG is being phased out of parking garages, more upfront, significantly less exposure at the other end. And this is where it gets worse, because the next one is so overlooked that most builders don't even consider it a risk. Part 3. Tinted windows exceeding legal limits. This one looks completely innocent. It is not. This is the mistake. Window tinting is one of the most state variable, country variable regulations in vehicle code, and one of the first things flagged on resale inspection. In the U.S., legal VLT percentages vary dramatically. California requires 70% on front-side windows, Texas 25%, Florida 28%. A van converted in one state and sold in another can be immediately non-compliant the moment it crosses a border. The buyer doesn't just inherit the van, they inherit your violation. In the UK, Germany, and the Netherlands, this is enforced even more strictly through the IVA, Individual Vehicle Approval. In Germany, anything below 70% VLT on front-side windows is illegal, regardless of where the conversion was done. UK law mirrors this. A non-compliant tint fails the MOT at resale. When a buyer catches this during pre-purchase, they knock the full cost of removal and replacement off your asking price, typically $300 to $800, or they walk entirely. This isn't a $30,000 mistake, but it's exactly the kind of detail that tells a buyer your van wasn't built carefully, and that suspicion costs you on everything else in the negotiation. The fix is free at the point of build. Compliant film, certification stickers, documentation in the vehicle file. Most small converters skip it because the original buyer doesn't ask. The resale buyer always does. Part 4. Roof racks and payload overloading. A roof loaded with solar panels, a rooftop tent, a spare wheel, and a water tank looks capable. It may also be several hundred kilograms over the vehicle's legal gross vehicle weight rating. Most buyers miss this completely, and this is not a small mistake. This is the kind of mistake that follows the van for years. Every van has a GWVR stamped on the door pillar. The Ford Transit Custom sits between 2,800 and 3,500 kilograms, depending on variant. The Ram ProMaster 1500 tops at 2,948. Add a full conversion interior, typically 400 to 700 kilograms, load the roof, and you are at or past that limit before a single person steps inside. In the EU, a van registered as a motor caravan must carry a type-approved payload certificate. If the conversion exceeds the base vehicle's payload rating, you need a higher GWVR variant or a formal re-rating from the manufacturer. Without it, the van is technically unlawful to operate at full load. France and Germany increased roadside checks on converted vans for this in 2025 and 2026. This is not theoretical. Enforcement is happening. In the U.S., GWVR overloading voids most major RV and vehicle insurance policies in an accident, not a fine print technicality, a complete denial of your claim. Smart buyers weigh the van after conversion, check the spec plate, and do the math before loading anything. If you're buying this year, this affects you directly. Part 5. DIY electrical work without licensed sign-off. Here's the one the van life community won't like. And it needs to be said, the entire industry runs on DIY electrical builds. There are genuinely skilled builders producing technically clean systems outside of any licensed framework. None of that matters when your van is on fire or when an insurer asks who certified the installation. This is the part nobody tells you. In the UK and across most of the EU, any fixed 240-volt AC wiring, shore power hookups, inverter systems, mains, standard sockets must be certified by a qualified electrician. UK means Part P or equivalent. Germany means a licensed electro-installateur. A DIY shore power installation, however clean technically, is uninsurable as a fixed electrical system under most major leisure vehicle policies. In the US, if you have a fire originating in a non-certified electrical system, proving coverage requires demonstrating that the system met reasonable safety standards.
A hand-built system with no documentation will not clear that bar. The 12-volt DC side, battery bank, solar controller, DC to DC charger, carries lower regulatory exposure. The AC side is where the liability lives. A licensed inspection and sign-off typically runs $200 to $500. Compare that to a denied six-figure fire claim. Part 6. Structural bed platforms that alter safety zones. A fixed bed platform sounds harmless. This is the mistake most builders make without realizing it. Panel vans have crumple zones and structural reinforcement channels engineered into the floor and lower body. A heavy platform bolted through the van floor using non-load rated fasteners creates stress concentrations the manufacturer never designed for. In a serious collision, that matters in ways no listing photo will show you. When a buyer's inspector identifies non-load rated floor penetrations, increasingly standard practice in the UK and Netherlands, the van gets flagged. If those penetrations go through structural steel rather than panel, you're looking at a structural engineer's assessment before the van can transfer with clean documentation. Once an inspector flags structural modifications like this, buyers don't negotiate, they walk. At that point, you're not selling a van, you're explaining a problem. The correct build uses existing cargo tie-down rails, load-rated L-track systems, and keeps floor penetrations above panel steel only. Not meaningfully more expensive to do right, significantly more defensible when the inspector arrives. Part 7. Non-type approved water systems. Fresh and gray water plumbing sits in a regulatory gray zone that is closing fast. And the specific failure mode that kills resale is almost always the same thing: gray water. A van draining gray water directly to the road is illegal in most US states, illegal across the entire EU, illegal in the UK. Many conversions, particularly older builds and budget outfitters, use exactly this setup. The drain drains through a floor hole while driving, or pools in an unventilated tank producing mold, odor, and contamination a buyer will smell before they see it. When a buyer traces a drain hose to a floor hole, the negotiation ends. They walk or they discount, and a gray water tank retrofit, including panel removal to access the floor, can easily run into the low thousands. A properly sealed gray water system with pump-out access adds $300 to $800 to a build. At resale, it signals the builder understood compliance, not just aesthetics. In this market, that signal is worth more than the cost. Part 8. Unregistered sleeping capacity changes. If you bought a van rated for 2 occupants and converted it with a bunk system for 4, you have changed the legal occupancy designation of the vehicle. In most markets, that requires re-registration. Most builders never do this. Your insurance policy covers a specific number of occupants. Any passenger position, fixed or makeshift, must meet minimum seatbelt and crash protection standards in both the US and EU. A bunk doubling as rear seating while moving is a compliance failure in most jurisdictions, and an uncertified rear seating arrangement transfers liability to every subsequent owner. The builder who skipped this step handed their legal exposure to you. Smart buyers ask what the van was registered as, what it is now, and whether those two things match. If they don't, that gap belongs in the price, or you walk away from the deal. Part 9. Non-compliant insulation materials. Almost nobody talks about this one, and it is going to matter significantly more over the next 3 years. Spray foam in certain closed-cell insulation products common in early 2020s conversions have been reclassified in several EU member states as non-compliant for this vehicle class. The reason is fire propagation. These materials produce toxic gases at rates exceeding acceptable thresholds inside a sealed vehicle cabin. 2 resale consequences. First, vans entering UK or EU markets found to contain non-compliant insulation can be required to undergo full remediation before registration transfer. Second, UK insurers are increasingly excluding fire claims where spread was accelerated by unlisted aftermarket insulation. Compliant alternatives, mineral wool, graphite-infused polyisocyanurate board, aerogel blanket cost more and carry the certification spray foam doesn't. Buyers who understand this will ask. The ones who don't ask in 2026 will find out when they try to sell in 2028. Part 10. Exterior modifications without type approval. Wheel spacers, lifted suspension, non-standard lighting, aftermarket bumpers all appear regularly on converted vans in the current market. All carry type approval risk that most buyers never think to check. In the EU, any modification changing external dimensions, axle geometry, or lighting configuration requires type approval documentation. A lifted Sprinter with wheel spacers that has not been re-registered under a modified specification is operating outside of its original approval. Roadside technical checks in Germany and France are specifically targeting converted vehicles, and a van impounded pending documentation is a van you cannot sell, drive, or insure until that paperwork exists. In the U.S., suspension lifts exceeding state limits, wheel spacers beyond certain track width thresholds, and aftermarket lighting not meeting SAE or DOT standards can all fail state inspection and void coverage in an accident involving those components. If you're buying this year and crossing state lines, check the modification against every state you intend to register in, not just the one you're buying from. Conclusion. And this is exactly how people lose $30,000 without realizing it until they try to sell. The campervan market in 2026 is full of builds that look extraordinary and are documented terribly. The conversion industry grew too fast. Too many small builders learned to weld and wire before they learned to certify. Buyers who paid premium prices for visually stunning rigs are now sitting on vehicles a competent inspector would flag in under an hour. The van that impresses your friends is often the one that scares your buyer. If you were buying a converted van this year, you need a pre-purchase inspection from someone who checks compliance, not just condition. You need documentation for every structural, electrical, and mechanical modification. Those documents need to match the registration records, and if any of them are missing, that gap belongs in the price, or you walk away from the deal entirely. In 2026, the smartest camper van is not the one that looks the best. It is the one that passes inspection without a single question asked. Smart buyers do this differently every single time. Drop the worst compliance issue you've personally seen on van listing in the comments, because some of you have seen things that should never have been sold. The best ones are going into a follow-up video.